Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Welcome back, everybody. We are weeks away from the start of the holidays, and with that comes entertainment, people coming over, dining, and all of that. Many of us starting to think about that. How's that going to look? How are we going to set that up? Are we going to be lugging in that plastic table from the garage again and putting a tablecloth on it? We're going to talk with an interior designer today about, I'm going to call it best practices for your dining area when you're hosting. There's a lot of do's and a lot of don'ts. And if you're thinking about making changes, maybe this is the time to do it with the holidays coming. MaryJo Major joins us once again. How you doing today?
Hi, Steve. I'm doing great.
Wonderful having you back here. And this is something I think a lot of people wrestle with. And now that, COVID is clear. By the way, I don't have COVID. It's just a cold.
Don't worry. I didn't have any assumptions.
No masks needed.
That's right.
Either way.
Right.
More of us are getting together. More of us are socializing. And when it comes to dining, it's a focal point. Everybody getting together. What's your first thought about the dining area?
Well, my first thought, that's an interesting question, actually. The first thought I think about is, does it have a personality? Does it have like a little bit of its own thing going? So I would say specifically, if you have a dining room, the first thing I think about is kind of what is on the walls. And to that extent, what color may or may not be on the walls. So I think a lot of dining rooms these days, especially, people are doing more exciting colors, bolder, brighter, or just, something that feels a little different than kind of the box that we used to think of long ago. But I do have a few paint colors that I call like my no paint colors, the colors that I wouldn't necessarily go to first in a dining room.
Curious what these are going to be, because when you think of restaurants, especially fast food, I'm not suggesting these colors. However, there's a reason that colors are selected to stimulate the appetite. Think about McDonald's. Think about Burger King. They're in the same family. They're oranges, reds with some yellow. Mm-hmm. Burger King almost has similar colors to McDonald's. Chick-fil-A, by the way, I have a new one opening in my town in 2 days. Can't wait. Love Chick-fil-A.
Nice.
Red. And it's been said that red stimulates the appetite. I'm not suggesting in your dining room using red, but I'm just illustrating the point that color plays a very important role in eating.
I agree. And so to that end, I would say that the first color that I probably wouldn't go with first in your dining room is white. I think that a white dining room, even though you could maybe argue that it's clean, I think that having some sort of tone on the wall of some sort actually creates a more kind of cozy, inviting environment, as opposed to, something that feels a little bit more sterile. So the first color I would probably avoid is white. And I want to clarify that this means like a stark white, right? Like this isn't a super, soft, like warm ivory. This is like a piece of paper.
We're not talking buff cream. We're talking white.
White. Yeah. And, that may be controversial with some, but I think that's a color I wouldn't necessarily pick. And then the other colors I wouldn't necessarily go with are, maybe you'd not assume that you wouldn't do this, but I think that neon colors, like really bright in your face neon colors, are probably something to stay away from. A little too, again, think about what you're trying to do. You're trying to help people stay at the table longer, have conversation. And if they have something that's like a little bright behind the person, they might be able to keep talking just with their sunglasses on.
It's not, I can't even see it. I can't even visualize that in a dining area.
Yeah. I think I'm sure it's all been done at some point. I'm just kind of saying it about what I wouldn't do. The other thing that might seem, again, maybe oh yeah, of course, but I actually think that a really mid-tone gray color, like think like dull gray, it like, maybe even the color of, I wouldn't call it concrete, but something that's just really mid-tone gray actually also doesn't really do much for a dining room.
Yeah, sort of like a putty.
Yeah. Yes, I
Yeah.
agree. Yes, that color. It's just too again, coming from the idea of creating a personality, some sort of a warmth factor, creating an inviting, welcoming space. I just think there are other options. There's a lot of other colors out there, and I think that specific color you don't have to use.
Can you get us in the zone? Like pick some,
Yeah.
and I wrestle with, especially in this room,
Hmm.
warm or cool colors. Is there a
Right.
preference?
So I think about things from a more of a holistic standpoint, right? So depending on what other colors are in the rest of your house are maybe kind of where I would lean. So for example, I just had a friend, we were talking about her own dining room, and she doesn't have a ton of color. We're kind of introducing more and more color, and she has kind of some deep jewel tones. And so we talked about having like a really deep kind of green color on the wall because it would help balance out these other colors she has while creating kind of a different, again, a personality. So it doesn't feel kind of like the same thing you see all throughout the house. So I would say that whatever your happier colors are, pick something in that field. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, don't you like tropical colors, Steve? Is that
Do
right?
I do?
Yeah. So then I would ask, okay, so if you like tropical colors, then you can go one of two ways. We could do something a little bit lighter on the walls. So maybe like a pale yellow or maybe a fun peachy color. Or I think, if I'm not mistaken, you like more of the teals. So you can go maybe even a kind of a lighter teal color. Or lately, a lot of people are wanting the more kind of moody, dark, kind of a little bit, it feels like a little bit of a hug, if you will. So they'll go on the opposite end of the spectrum. So they'll go like the really deep tones of that color.
Is that okay in a dining room?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
I think as long as you can see your food, right?
Funny you should say that. Funny you should say that. I was at a restaurant last night with my son, and
Uh-huh.
I loved the table lamps. They were
Oh,
rechargeable, and it was just a base with a stem that went up and a top. But the cool part was it focused the light down. So it wasn't in your eye or anything.
mhm.
And it wasn't like just a little, electronic candle that really does
Right.
nothing. It illuminated really well. I was like highly impressed.
I'm really glad you brought that up. I think that lighting in a space plays a huge part, especially in a dining room,
Yeah.
and feeling like you can see what you're eating, but also, again, creating the ambiance you want. So whether that's, I mean, if you want to have, let's just say, a Saturday lunch, big gathering, and you want everyone, that you can't really create, you're not going to be able to create what you could probably in that restaurant, right? Like it's going to feel lighter, but I do think that having different lights on or off or on a dimmer really still make a difference even during the day. And to that end, I think a lot of people, when they move into their homes, specifically like the main light over their dining room table, I don't know. What do you say? 50-50 people like it. It goes with what they have.
I feel that it's the second thing somebody does. It's got to have that big chandelier, got to have that big
Right.
light over the table,
Yeah.
which if you didn't, what would you do?
Well, it is a focal point, whether you want it to be or not. It is kind of part of the what you see when you look at a table.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I like to think of it more of how formal you want it to be, and that kind of dictates the fixture. So if you want it to
Mm.
feel really formal and more traditional, then something that does have some more oomph to it. It's more grandiose. It has, it's wider. Maybe it has glass on it. And then if you want it to be a little bit more, I would say sleeker, thinking about it from kind of a more sculptural element. I think a lot of times people will just think of the standard chandelier where it just kind of comes down and kind of loops up to the different lights.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many other light fixtures now. There's some that even look like branches, where they have, or they kind of go up and down with little things coming from them. Or I've seen it where there's these circles, these open circles, and they'll have, it sounds maybe weird to say, but it has these little birds on it. And they almost, it's like this whimsical kind of modern element. So I just think that there's more to a chandelier, more to the focal point than just the kind of what you think of when you close your eyes and think of what goes over a dining room table.
Well, I guess one thing's for sure. We need it. We need light.
Yes.
So something has to, and you have, the electrical hookup typically above the dining room table anyway. Mm-hmm. So it's gotta be something, but I guess it really depends on the level of sophistication, depending on your room. But right. I want to go back to a word you said before, and I think it's key. Personality.
Yeah.
Personality. Do you feel that many dining rooms or dining areas are lost? They don't have personality. There's no direction.
Yes, I do. And it's part of the reason why I get brought in a lot of times specifically for a dining room, because, I know people know that it should be like we just talked about, inviting, comfortable, cozy, but there's so many little elements that can make that happen or not happen that a lot of times people will kind of look at it and say, I don't know what's wrong. I just know that it's just a table and chairs. And I don't really know how to get it to feel the way I want it to, but, I need help. And so that's where we'll start talking about this personality and this atmosphere and how they want it to feel. And what I think sometimes get stuck in the dining room discussion is not just how many people you want at the table and, how much the lighting, but kind of I do think that there needs to be something on the walls. And this could go for even if you have an open concept. I think a lot of people will have sometimes their dining room in the middle of, like, just say their kitchen and their living room. And so they say, well, we don't really have a wall. And that is usually true. But there's sometimes even a kind of a side wall that if you stand at a table, you can kind of see behind. So it kind of depends on the proximity of the layout of everything. But I do think that the wall also has what you put on the wall also makes a difference in this personality discussion.
I believe it's the little things that make such a difference. Like, for example, I've seen on dining room tables, and and you could take this either way, whether it's more formal or not, but candles, candlesticks, and the candles in colors, and a bunch of them just, it was like, whoa, what a nice little pop of color.
Yes, I candles are having a moment too, especially, I don't know if you've seen, people are starting to do hand painted candles. Have you seen this?
No.
Like these tapered candles with little designs on them. Yes, I love something in the middle of a table that isn't necessarily, flowers I always love in general, but having something that's kind of you don't have to worry about if it's watered or not, like candles is a great way to kind of change up the personality of the table. Or even kind of, you mentioned it earlier when you brought out the plastic table, or the folding table, but tablecloths, I think that also can kind of change up the way you see the room. So it's the table linens of the past are coming back.
Are they really?
Yes, I think that people want, going back to this detail discussion, they want their homes to feel special. They want it to feel like it has kind of purpose. And I personally love tablecloths because your table doesn't necessarily have to get quote unquote messy. You can just take it off and wash it and your table looks clean. So I love that aspect of it, but also that it creates a different environment depending on what kind of tablecloth I have on it.
What are some of the other things that we can do that are more simple, like candlesticks? Minimal investment, different colors, if that supports you. Tablecloth. What a difference adding the right tablecloth with some of the right linen around it, like
Yes.
pops it up. And,
Yes.
if you don't want to go formal, you can strike a nice balance in between that.
Yes, you can. Absolutely. There's a lot of things out there that are a lot more casual. When I say tablecloths, I'm not talking like some damask, some very intense pattern that's like on silk. I'm talking about something that's linen maybe and just kind of simple. You can get them at you can get them at Marshall, you can get them at Target. You can get them a lot of places. They're not necessarily the fine places. The other things I would say that you can do to kind of, I would maybe say like jazz things up, is kind of going along the same lines as the tablecloth, is to just kind of add some more extra linens or coasters, some sort of something for people to put their drinks on or their plates on. Or I really actually, the rechargeable light you mentioned earlier, those are actually really affordable. That is a really great way.
Yeah, it was
to add to your table.
And this was a casual restaurant, not like super casual, but in between. But It was gold. It was gold toned.
They're under, I think they're around $20 or 30. I mean, they're pretty affordable. Yeah, and you can get them in a variety of places, but
sure.
Yeah, they are cool. And they're really cool because you can move them. So if you decide to go outside, you can just bring your little light with you and put it on your side table in your patio.
And they last a long time. Like they must, it's got to be going from probably 4 p.m. until like 11.
Yes, that sounds about right. I think I've heard anywhere from, the 6 to 9 hours of time. And, I know even nowadays, some of them are being made with light bulbs that are chargeable. So I know some lamps that are rechargeable, it's the light bulb itself that you kind of have to swap out with another light bulb that's already charged if you.
Oh, okay. Never thought of that. Huh.
Yeah. Yeah. But the little ones for the table, they're great. They're just great to have. And you don't have to worry about anything catching on fire. And they do create a different, extra element on the table that is really nice.
There was an element of class because it had a gold tone to it, and it was so functional. Like, I looked over at the table next to me where it was off. Nobody was sitting at that table, and what a void of light. Like we could see what we were eating, but it wasn't overkill.
Right.
Personality. Any other thoughts to add personality to your dining area?
I think you could. It's a little bit like most things, you just keep going if you want. I think that however you serve any sort of food, if you have any sort of kind of buffet or any sort of bar cart, any sort of thing that you kind of have things out on, I do like to have, some extra decorations or even some ways to kind of display food. So thinking about highs and lows, kind of what goes high, what goes low. So for example, this is a little bit of a tangent, but if you have things laid out on a buffet, if you want to maybe create one of the things you have serving on like a pie stand, like something that's higher off the actual surface, something that kind of creates these adding height in different areas of a surface, whether that's on the table or on the buffet, creates this visual interest. So it's really, I think, a nice kind of surprise to have something that's not directly on the table or on the bar cart, wherever it's lifted. And it doesn't have to be everything. It just can be like one little thing.
Wow. I never thought of that because right away in the serving area, tray, it's all flat.
Yes. It's easiest to do with things like pies or bowls, things that aren't easy. Yeah.
You could elevate the salad, whatever bowl you're serving, the large bowl that everybody picks from, elevate that a little bit. And you could even do that underneath a tablecloth where you could just put, I don't know, go with me here, a box underneath it and elevate it up so it's got a little bit of height.
I think you can totally do that. I think especially if you won't want, whatever that thing is to kind of remain a little bit more off limits if it's in the middle of a table. Yeah. So maybe it's the extra dinner rolls. You don't want anyone to know they're there. Yeah. I having a little bit of the varied interest or varied heights it creates that visual interest. So yes. And, I think whatever window is closest to their dining room, I think that's another way to kind of add personality to make sure that there's some sort of, I'm trying to be loose with this idea, careful with me saying this, but like it's a window treatment. So some sort of either drapery or shade, something besides just your open and closed blinds. I do think that adds personality to a space.
What about on the wall? You mentioned wall before. Certainly pictures, photos, but any rule of thumb there? I
love having one of two things, either a mirror to reflect the light from the light source to kind of go back into the space, or a collection of something. So you could have, that could be whatever you want it to be. It could be even basket, something that's even more kind of 3D. But I do like having some sort of element on the wall that connects with the space. So yeah, I would say collections and a mirror. If you don't want to go the traditional big, large art piece, because that's the last thing I would say is another option.
I'm very careful about mirrors, and I don't know why that is.
Really?
Not superstition, anything like that.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't have a single mirror in my entire home.
Really?
Aside from the bathrooms, obviously.
Right.
In my daughter's room, she has a full standing mirror. I just don't. I don't know why. I don't know. I guess I don't know where to put them.
Yeah, that makes sense. And there are mirrors these days too that are really antiqued, or they're really diffused, so you don't really get an accurate picture of yourself or whoever's in front of it. It's kind of blurry or distorted somehow. So maybe that's what you need.
Well, the funny thing is, before I leave, usually I'll walk in the bathroom closest to the door and look in the mirror. I'll look, all right, yeah, I'm good. I could just put one in the foyer. It would make more sense.
You could. That's one of my, yes.
You mentioned that once before.
I did.
You did?
I did. Yeah, that's something that not everyone has, but everyone, whether they realize it or not, they would like it.
I'm seeing that now. I really am. And I can see it on the wall, and how it would add, because I have nothing on the wall in the foyer, it would add some depth. It would add something,
Yes. Mirrors are great because they really do bring more light into a space, and they also create a depth. So you actually make the room feel bigger. That's why I know you've probably been in, especially in New York, there's places where they have the whole mirrored walls, or mirrors in like this tight restaurants where they'll have the mirrors, which sometimes is weird because you're looking at yourself, but it actually does kind of give this optical illusion of a bigger space.
It truly does. And 2 houses back, when I moved in the, I guess it was the den, the entire wall was mirrored, and
wow.
It just, I took it down. It was just too much. And the room wasn't big enough for the mirrors.
Yes. Maybe they were a dancer. Maybe they did
I don't
practice
know.
in there. Yeah, the mirrored walls are a very distinct look. I don't recommend it unless there's a real big reason for it. But
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a thing for a while.
Yeah.
I don't remember at what point, but maybe in the 90s or yeah.
I'm going back to the 80s. I'm going to say probably late 80s. And let me tell you, it was an interesting experience taking that mirror off the wall, because I had to get suction cups for the friend to carry. Yeah, exactly. Interesting tips. Yeah. I never thought that we could talk for a half hour about the dining room and things to add to it, to add personality and make it more inviting. Super cool.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Hosting, I think, is one of the main reasons for even having a house, in my opinion, is having people come over and enjoy time with you. And so having their dining room feel like that place to sit for a long time is important to me.
How do we find you?
Yeah, you can find me on my website, riseinteriors.co.
Super simple. Always great talking with you. I love your tips, your insight, and the way you explain things. It's clear. There's never any question mark. What did she mean? You get right to it, and I love it. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks so much, Steve.
We'll be right back. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, Dad, how do airplanes fly? What's in this box? Can I touch this? Where does sand come from? Is this tree good for climbing? What happens if I mix these two things together? How are babies made? What does this thing do?
Kids are curious about everything, including guns. Talking to them about gun safety in your home is a good first step, but you can do more. Always keep your guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Storing your guns securely is the best way to prevent family fire, including unintentional shootings. For more information on safe gun storage and ways to keep your family safe, visit endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org.
What do we keep in the attic? What's this thing called? Can I ride my bike backwards?
Like I said, kids are curious. It's up to us to keep them safe. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.